Everybody, this next gentleman came to the summit back in December and he delivered and broke my heart wide open, cracked my heart wide open. This man has a heart of gold, loves his kids, loves his family. I love the American flag behind him. And he is one of our legacy sponsors, so I want to give a shout out to him for that. So thank you for that, brother. Jon, this summit stage is yours.
No, I appreciate that, David. And can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Oh man, well, thank you guys all for being on here today. Christian, that was an amazing story. I really love getting on after teaching and just hearing your story, hearing your heart. Um, Hearing these stories are great. I mean, I know I teach all day long, so it's hard to get on and watch a lot of these lives, but the ones that I do get a chance to see, I know it's just really touching. It pulls at a lot of my heartstrings, but in a lot of really great ways. And I told David a little bit ago, I got a sick kiddo at home that I got to get to and tend to. So mine may not be as long as anticipated. That might be here just brief, but I do live by a little bit of a mantra of family first. It's part of that first ministry first that I live by. So I'm going to make sure I can get home to my daughter. But one of the things that I did want to speak on today, as you know, David so graciously invited me back to the summit, was honestly the one other topic I was going to maybe speak on a couple months ago, and it was the one that I did not speak on. So when this came around and he gave me the opportunity, I'm like, I know exactly the story that I wanted to touch on. And honestly, for myself, it was a time. Almost 20 years ago. So I was a freshman in college. I was a freshman in college. I was being an adult for the first time pretty much ever, or seeming like I was an adult. I was 18, 19 years old, feeling like I had the whole world in front of me. I feel on top of the world, basically invincible. I teach high school kids all day long. Most high school kids will describe themselves as feeling invincible, that nothing can get to them. And I was one of those kids living, top of the world, whatever it was, doing the freshman experience. Uh, and it was one day in the middle of January when I got a call from my mother that all of a sudden the idea of adulting in real world hit me straight in the face. And she called me and she was crying. And I was like, Mother, why are you crying? Uh, and her voice just said one word. And her word was David. I'm like, well, what about David? David, she told me, had just passed away. And like my entire world just came full front in front of my face. Now, David, for a lot of you that don't know him, David was a kid, one of my closest friends. He was one of my closest friends at the time. He was a little over a year behind me in school. He actually had just graduated high school. We grew up together. He was a kid that was rough around the edges. He was that kid that you weren't sure if he was going to graduate school or not. You know, we were just pulling for him just to pull it together just long enough to get through high school. It wasn't easy for him. He struggled academically. He made some questionable choices like we all seem to do. But underneath that, he was one of my closest friends because he had one of the biggest hearts of anybody I ever knew. If you got, beneath kind of the rough surface, he was just a giant teddy bear. He was the kind of friend that you could count on. He's the kind of friend that would give you the shirt off his back. He was the kind of friend that would show up when you need him. And just, the it was I think back to that day, I'm 36 now. I was 19 at the time. So that was 17 years ago, but it still in some ways feels just like yesterday. It feels like just the other day he was sitting on my couch and we were having a conversation when I was home from vacation. And, we were being stupid teenage boys, but having a good time, just soaking up that friendship. And the crazy thing was about this whole story was he had finally turned a corner. This kid not only graduated, but he got himself put together into a nice job right out of school where he was really starting to turn his life around. I mean, he graduated, there was momentum. I felt like life was really opening up for this kid. And then one day I get this call from my mother to learn that while he was working at his new job as a mechanic, working underneath the car slipped off the jack and it crushed his chest. He was dead on impact. To me, this was like a time stop moment. It was, and even when I think about it to this day, I'm just still torn to my heart that this could have happened. Because the hardest part wasn't just losing him, it was losing who he was becoming. Like I said, he was this guy that really life was starting to really take shape for him. It was knowing that he had just begun to step into something that was really a lot better, and it was cut short. And here's the thing, grief doesn't ask permission before it comes on. It just shows up. It's shock, it's anger. For myself, it was a lot of confusion, understanding why this happened, how it could have happened. It was that feeling inside my chest when you wake up and all of a sudden it's real. And I'll be honest, for myself, I was somebody who had just come into a big part of my life, which was faith. I was somebody who came to faith relatively late in life. I didn't grow up in church, anything like that. I came to faith when I was 18. So I'd only been fresh in my faith about a year, a little over that. And I'll be honest, I started to question it wholeheartedly. I questioned why somebody would fight so hard to improve their life, to get things in such working order, only to have it taken away in an instant. I questioned why, if somebody's willing to work that hard, how come that doesn't equal protection? And maybe there's some of you here that are either in this room right here in this Zoom room or watching this that you might know exactly what that feels like. Grief, like I said, it doesn't ask permission. It doesn't follow a script. Some people, they cry loudly. We've been hearing from some of the speakers, I imagine, today. Like, everybody goes through the grieving process differently. Some people cry loudly. Some people go numb. Some people get angry or withdraw. Some people might act strong in public, but in private, they break. You might be all of these above in different stages, right? Because grief comes on in different stages. There's really no right way to grieve. There's only your way. And I want that to be known today. There is no set way to grieve. Everybody's going to go through it differently. I love how Kristen talked about how there is no timetable related to it. I still have some days today, 17 years later, where I'm thinking about it, and that this is still part of the grieving process. I don't think we're ever done grieving certain loved ones in our lives. It may look a little different than it did right after the fact, but I don't think it ever quite goes away. And the death of my friend David really brought me at a crossroads. For a while I was questioning my faith. I thought that questioning it meant that maybe I was losing it. But what I eventually realized was that I wasn't necessarily losing my faith, but I was being forced to decide that if it was real. In the middle of the anger, the confusion, the ultimate heartbreak that I was experiencing, because I was that type that was really strong on the surface, but it was during his calling hours that all of a sudden I broke. I had been the person that was calling in my friends that he had known from other places to get them in for this, helping them get there, organize everything. And it was like midway through his calling hours where I basically just hit the floor. It was just that moment where it was like, okay. But I had a choice in this moment. I had a choice of, was I going to walk away from my faith? Was I going to pull away from God? Was I going to do these things? Or was I going to lean into him? And at that time, I didn't want to lean into him because I had too many questions that were unanswered. I had too many feelings that, didn't really suit well with the faith. I was really angry. I was really questioning a lot of things. And I didn't want easy answers at that time. What I needed was an anchor. Grief a lot of times can feel like waves. It can feel really, subtle at sometimes, and then it can hit you blindside. I know anytime I hear a Johnny Cash song, I'm brought to tears because this guy was old school Johnny Cash. It was his thing. That was a song you could always hear him listening to and singing, and it drove me up a wall when he was alive, funny enough, because that was not my kind of genre of music. But now I look forward to any time I hear it because it reminds me of a piece of him, and it almost makes me feel like he is there with me. So grief can come in like waves, and some days are calm, and the other days can just take the breath out of you. And I quickly realized that, without something solid in your life, something that you can truly anchor to, you end up drifting. And faith in that moment became my anchor. And I was at this crossroads of what I was going to do. And it was not because I suddenly understood everything. It was not all of a sudden because the pain disappeared, but because I chose to believe that even when I couldn't see the hope in that moment, God still held tomorrow. So, leaning into my faith didn't erase the pain. My pain is still here. There's still days, even just talking about it right now, I'm grieving. I'm painful through it, but it gave my pain somewhere to land. And it reminded me that this world necessarily isn't the whole story. That grief made me aware, like a lot of speakers have probably said, just how fragile life is. And it reminds me that, because I have my faith, I have hope that even though life may end on this earth one day, that may not be the end of our story. So, what it kind of taught me, this whole experience, because losing him truly changed me. It taught me that life gets real really fast. Because here I was, this high school kid in college, doing the college thing, eating on someone else's, I mean, eating when somebody else prepared my food and just going to classes. So it's like, it made the world become real. Because, yeah, you hear stories of people losing people, but it didn't become real until I lost someone close. It really taught you that, I know the old cliche is, time's not promised, but it's not. I've now lost a few more people in my life, my grandmother and other people, all of a sudden. It's true, though. Life is not promised. If you think that we are guaranteed to have next week, next month, next year, you never know. You see it in the stories all the time and in the news and all these things. And sometimes it doesn't hit quite home until it hits home. And that's unfortunate how that happens, but it's sometimes the truth. And that's how it was for me. It's taught me that um it taught me not to wait. I'll be honest. I wish I could have another conversation with him. I didn't talk to him that much when I was in college the year and he was kind of doing his own thing. We connected when we got in person, but I didn't like reach out once a week and this and connecting. And you would have thought that if he was one of my closest friends, I would have. And it's a regret I have to live with. But it has taught me on the other flip side not to wait. If you have people that are important to you, you need to be intentional with that time that you have with them because you just truly don't know. When my grandmother was diagnosed with dementia, she went from being my grandmother to being somebody that didn't recognize me in a matter of 2 weeks. And that's heartbreaking because the way she communicated with me before her dementia really accelerated was vastly different than what it looked like when she was on the other side. So it taught me not to wait to have those conversations, not to wait to say I love you to my children or my wife or my mother or anybody for that matter, some of the dearest friends I have. It taught me not to wait to call those people, to just see how they're doing, to check in on them, to see how life is going. If you saw my first speech from a couple months ago, first time I got up here to speak, I talked about my dad. I talked about the fact that he and I had a fractured relationship for 25 years where we didn't see each other. We didn't talk to each other. And it wasn't until I was 30 that we had a reconciliation. And I finally learned how to truly forgive myself and to forgive him. Losing my friend David taught me that you don't wait to forgive. Don't burden yourself with that for so many years because you never know if you'll actually get the chance to forgive them. And it also taught me not to wait to encourage someone who's finally trying. If somebody's really trying to put their life back together and somebody who is going through a tough time, like I got a friend right now who's going through, she's working through rehab and she's doing things like that and recovery and all this stuff. Is don't wait to encourage them. You never know what kind of support and encouragement that kind of mean to them because everybody I believe has a spark inside of them. I do. I truly do. We talk about ignite the spark here. I know David's thing on that, and I want to tie that back a little bit. Everybody has a spark inside of them. Whether or not it's really visible depends on the person. But everybody has it, and I think it's just waiting to be revealed. I think so. And if that just takes the encouragement of one person to really bring that out of someone, that matters, you guys. My buddy David, his life wasn't long, but it wasn't meaningless either. He did so much good in the 19 years, or just under 19 years that he was on this earth, in ways that he never even knew. He never knew that after his passing that there was going to be a scholarship created in his honor for the high school that he graduated to go towards a kid who lived a similar life, maybe was in a trade school and going for something like that. Which, of course, is hilarious to think about because he was a kid who was really not into academics at all. He avoided them at all costs and yet gets a scholarship named after him. His life wasn't meaningless. It allowed other kids in his similar position to actually have means to go get education and trades and things to have a job in this life. So I know losing him caused me a little bit to isolate. It caused me to not want to get close to other friends because I was afraid to lose more friends. I was because he was a massive part of my life in ways that I didn't even know until he was gone. And I know that a lot of people can feel that way when they lose someone close. You can have that fear to connect again, to open yourself up, to really build a deep relationship, to love. That can come up. That fear is real. I battled that for a little bit. Uh, But honestly, if that loss hits you that real of a manner, that means it was probably real love. So like what I was trying to say is, but the risk of real loss is the price you're going to pay for real love. So if you're not willing to connect with other people, if you're not really willing to pour yourself into other people, that's going to be the price you pay. Okay, grief. If you're somebody who's grieving, it doesn't mean that you're broken. Like I said, everybody grieves in their own way and in different time frames, and it's going to look different for every person. What it means, honestly, if you're grieving, is that you really cared about somebody and you loved them deeply. And I think that uh, benefit, or not benefit, I'm trying to think of the good word for that one here. If you were willing, if you were able to have a really deep connection with somebody and impact their lives and them impact yours, it's a beautiful price to pay if someday you might lose them. I mean, I look back at even with my grandmother, you know, it hit me so hard because I loved her so much. Because we were so close. And honestly, if you're somebody like myself who has faith, questioning it doesn't disqualify you in any way. Sometimes it actually deepens it. This was actually a really big moment in my life where my faith really deepened, because I had to look at what the grieving process looked like. I had to look at myself. I had to look at what my faith was anchored in, and losing him didn't destroy it. It actually, like I said, kind of made me anchor into it, really lean into it. Um, so when David asked me to speak, the idea of this ignite the spark, it it hit different, because to me, ignite the spark means like the time is now. Not when you necessarily feel safe, not when you have the guarantees in life, because there are no guarantees, not when you're even certain about tomorrow, because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. It's now. Sometimes the spark isn't going to be motivation, because motivation is based on your feelings and it comes and goes. Sometimes it's just hope. Sometimes it's a decision just to anchor in instead of to drift. Sometimes it's truly just choosing to live forward, even when your heart's been broken. And that is really hard to do sometimes, because you're in the present moment and all you're thinking about is the past. But sometimes allowing yourself to live forward is actually one of the best things you can do for yourself and for those around you too. So, like I said earlier, I would give anything to have one more conversation with him. I really would. One more laugh, one more moment. But I don't get that. And we don't when we lose the one that we love. But here's what I do instead. I try to live in a way that honors the time that he didn't get. I try to cherish the moments more deeply. He was a big family guy. So I try to live more intentionally. When I'm honoring my family, I feel like I'm also honoring him. When I am, I'm trying to remember some of the crazy things that we would do. It's just finding moments to honor him in a way that he didn't get. I lean into my faith when life doesn't make sense, because time is fragile. We know this. Love, love can be risky, but grief is real, and your faith can anchor you. But the hope is still alive. So, what I want to leave you with is just to lean into something, to anchor yourself, to hold on tight, and to live forward, because the time, I believe, is now. That's what I got, David.
Absolutely loved it, brother. Thank you again for joining us and bringing the fire like you do and standing out in snow blizzards with shorts and a t-shirt and looking like the abominable snowman, And that's dedication right there, bro. Absolutely loved it. The one question I have before we send it over to the Zoom land is, what legacy do you want to build right now for you and your family?
I want to build a legacy where they focus on the present moment, that they're not looking 6 months, a year ahead, that they are truly taking advantage of the present moment, and they are looking to wherever interactions they come to whoever they talk to anything like this, whoever they come into contact with that day, how can you leave that person or that situation in a better place than you left it? Because you never know what person is one encouragement away from a life change. But if we are too focused on what we're doing tomorrow, 6 months from now, a year from now, we miss those opportunities. And I want to build, my legacy for my family is intentionality. Everything you do, I want you to be intentional with it.
Love it, bro. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to kick it
Welcome.
over to our Zoom land. What do you got, everybody? I see Mini Sierra has joined the group. And what do you got, Devereaux?
First and foremost, Jon, thank you so much. I very much remember the last summit and talking about the reconciliation with your father. And so just to let you know that that story has stuck with me. I know you're taking off in a heartbeat here. I just wanted to say that there's this lovely thread going through about recognizing fear of connecting after we experience a very intimate loss. And, that got described by one of our speakers eloquently as, really the fear to connect is the fear of losing someone again. And you just answered the legacy question, and it just reminded me, that when I've been hearing recently that when we worry about the future, it doesn't actually help anything that we're worrying about. It only steals from the peace of today. And last but not least, I know that you mentioned a couple of times you wish you could have one more conversation or have another conversation with David. And my question to you is, are you so certain that you don't? Clearly not face to face, clearly not audibly, but have you ever found yourself thinking about him and something pops into your head? Maybe a specific memory, a specific something, and maybe that's David.
Yeah, honestly, anytime I guys talking about with that Johnny Cash song, honestly, anytime I hear that Johnny Cash song, I feel like it's not Johnny Cash singing to me. I feel like it's him. So
It
in a
is.
way, it feels like a conversation.
I think it is. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's absolutely incredible. Anybody else before John gets behind the wheel and starts driving? Go ahead, Sierra.
I was just going to say, I heard you say that didn't find your faith until you're 18 or so, or religion, whatever it might be. Um, but I can feel the level of faith that you do have and the channel that you were speaking through to us here. Um, and even the last time that you spoke, I mean, that was incredibly powerful and it hit me hard last time you spoke. And this one, it's just funny to me because I'm like, wow, we live very similar lives in losses. So just keep doing what you're doing and keep being you.
Thank you, Sierra. John, as always, brother, you're always welcome back. We'll be doing another one in a couple of months. Absolutely love what you did for us today. Thank you for sharing your heart. Uh, not hope, I hate using that word. Take care of that little girl of yours and have a good rest of your day and tune in whenever you can, bro. Absolutely love having you with us.